Okay, so, Ashley, can you give me a thumbs up if you can see the slides? Thank you. Fantastic. Excellent. So I can't really see the chat very well. Well, maybe I can. I can see the chat while I'm doing this. So I'm gonna look every now and then to see if you have questions in the chat, but there will be time for questions as we go through. They won't all be at the end. Today, I'm going to talk to you about founder relational success. So why the hell do we care about this? Well, let me tell you from some founders themselves. Um, First, Brian Chesky gave an interview a couple of years ago where he talked about this exact thing. He said, I was prepared for all the business challenges. People told me what it's like to scale a team, hire executives, but we weren't really well prepared for the psychological and emotional journey that we would go on. And what he found was that he said, I remember going from being incredibly happy to feeling incredibly isolated, not having been prepared for those psychological and emotional challenges. And it turned out, says Chesky, that what I wanted was love. And you can also hear from Naval Ravikant, founder of AngelList. I love this quote from him, which says, health, love, and your mission in that order. Okay, so we see your mission, which most of us as founders always put first, is actually third. Nothing else matters. So we so take our health for granted and we expect love to just work out, relationships to just work. They shouldn't require any study or effort. That is part of the predominant narrative in our culture. But he's telling us that we need to rethink that. Okay, so, outcomes for today's talk. Number one, we're going to talk about how to succeed in your relationship with your business. Because, newsflash, as founders, and I'm a founder too, we are all in relationships with our businesses. And our patterns in relationships are going to come out in how we're relating, even to our startup. So, I want you to know, I will leave you with the understanding of how to succeed in that relationship. Number two, how to succeed in your personal relationships. And number three, one really awesome communication strategy. Now, number three, I hope that we have time to get to. It depends on the questions, but hopefully I'll at least get to tell you what it is, even if we don't have a lot of time for it. All right. Oh, yeah. And again, from other founders, don't be like that guy who told me the story of how he built a $40 million business, but it ate his soul and his wife left him. Okay? Because we don't want that. Nobody wants that. Then that makes success feel hollow. That's why we're here. Okay, so why listen to me about this? First of all, here's my email up here. Please write it down. You're welcome to send me messages. My background, I am a PhD scientist actually, and I went to MIT. Um, then I became a certified love and relationship coach, certified in executive coaching through the ICF and a TEDx speaker. And how I made that transition, how did I do that, you may ask? Well, I had a bit of a personal life crisis in my early 30s, and I ended up spending 4 years living in spiritual communities in Asia, where I took a deep dive into all things personal growth and relationships. I like to say I used to study molecular chemistry. Now I study a different kind of chemistry, relational chemistry. And personally, I've been married, divorced, and restarted dating as a mature adult after my divorce, and then eventually created the partnership of my dreams with my man. And we actually co-founded a startup together called Digital Wisdom. And there will be links to how you can find out about Digital Wisdom and more about me at the end of the talk. Please do connect. I love connecting with all of you and hearing what's going on in your lives as founders. Okay. And there's a very dorky picture of me as a scientist before I left and learned some things about relationships and embodiment. Okay. Um, Great. So, like I said before, you're in a relationship with your business. Yes, with your startup. And how you relate to your startup determines in large part your day-to-day happiness. So, what we're about to do is to bring some awareness of the patterns that we're playing out in relationship with our startups. And these may be semi-conscious or totally unconscious. Now, the goal here is just to bring a curious, gentle awareness to your patterns. We're not here to judge them. Um, in fact, from a neuroscience perspective, and one of my degrees is in neuroscience, beating yourself up is counterproductive, just from a point of view of how well your brain functions. Um, and I want you to know, and this is really true, the patterns that you are playing out in your relationships are likely there for a good reason. You likely learned them to protect yourself, for example. If you've ever been to therapy, you probably already know that, but I always like to repeat it because judging ourselves is a national sport. So remember, as you look at this framework on the next slide, just bring that curious awareness. All right. So this is the business relationship grid, and there's two axes. The y-axis here is how you feel about yourself. On the extreme, you might feel, I'm better than everyone. And on bad days, on the other extreme, you might feel, I'm not good enough. The x-axis is your presence, your amount of presence in your business. On one extreme, you might tend to avoid, and on the other extreme, I can't see my slide, you may tend to, this should say obsess. Because doubling down is a great thing, but that should say obsess there. So from avoiding to obsessing at the extremes. And health is in the center. We want to be neither avoiding nor obsessing, and we want to be neither feeling one up in self-esteem nor one down in self-esteem. So let's first look at how this plays out, because each quadrant represents a different way that we go out of balance in our relationship. And these quadrants are about how we act when we're at our worst. They aren't about who you are as a person. So as I describe each of the personalities in the quadrants, remember, just bring that non-judgmental awareness and ask yourself, oh, I have that tendency. Okay, so when you're stressed in your business, the first thing you might do is, okay, click the wrong button. Let me try this again. Okay, the first thing something's wrong with the mouse here. The first thing you might do is if you might tend to avoid and go one up. And I call this the rebel, and forgive my language here, but the I don't give a fuck rebel. And this has the vibes of like the WeWork co-founders. They tended to, they were not grounded in reality, tended to avoid what their business needed and just thought they knew better. And they were kind of like flying. And it ended up destroying the business. So that's the first quadrant. Notice if you think you tend to go in that direction. Uh, the next quadrant, if you go one up, but you tend to obsess, you might become a competitive overachiever where you're working really hard, but you're quietly doing it to prove that your business is better. You have to be the best, and you feel like if you're not the best, then you're nothing. That's a big mentality in America. Second place is the first loser mentality. So notice if you tend to get highly competitive and just push the pedal to the metal and overwork yourself when you get stressed. The next quadrant is the anxious people pleaser. This is if you tend to go one down and obsess about your business. So you might be feeling like, oh my gosh, am I gonna be liked? Am I good enough? Do I know enough? And you study all the things and you do all the things and you're just trying to make sure, does everyone like me? Do they like me? Am I getting approval? So that sort of small, mousy energy where you're very industrious, but you're kind of making yourself small and just hoping that someone will notice and approve of you. Again, this is where we go when we're out of balance, when we're stressed. This isn't about who you are. You may notice that you visit a lot of these and maybe multiple times per day. Remember, the goal here is awareness. And then if you tend to avoid and feel one down, feel like you're not good enough, then you might become a hopeless procrastinator. This is a pretty freezy state, nervous system freeze, if you know that term. And you may feel a lot of overwhelm, and like, oh, it's just not worth it. Why bother? Um, so those are the four ways we can go out of balance in this model. Of course, yours might not perfectly fit into there. That's fine too. I want to simply invite you to notice when you are stressed about your business, what tends to happen. Okay, so I want everyone to take a screenshot of this screen. So please do that now. Take a screenshot. And what we're going to do is I'm going to put you into breakout rooms of three, and you're going to have 2 minutes each to share where you think you tend to go when you're stressed, when you're out of balance in relationship with your business. Now, of course, if that feels too vulnerable, you can opt out. You can just say, hey, I'm opting out once you get in the breakout room. But I do encourage you to do this because the more we can talk about something, the more we can ruminate and just be heard, the more awareness we bring to these dark places, and then it's easier to heal them. And the other two people, when you're listening to someone talk, I suggest just listen. You're not there to solve anything, you're not there to give advice, just simply listen to each other. Okay, so let's look at how we walk ourselves back to health. Now you have a sense of where your favorite quadrant is when you go out of balance. But first, let's ask, what does health look like? And one thing I want to say is that it's really easy to know when you've gone out of the center of health in relationship because your body and your emotions will tell you. So, usually, what we're doing when we're playing out these quadrants is we have an inner child part or some other old part that's playing out unconscious patterns. And they tend to be either or very black and white thinking, perfectionistic, relentless, rigid, and harsh. You can feel the rigidity in your body, certain in your mind, tight in your body, and you become a short term thinker because your brain has become unintegrated, meaning that the unconscious and conscious parts aren't talking to each other anymore. Um, and what we want is to be able to walk ourselves back to the center of health, which you could also call the wise adult. And here we can think with nuance, we're realistic, we're forgiving, flexible, warm, humble, relaxed in our body, and we can think long term, big picture about the business. So, how do we walk ourselves back? If you tend to go into the rebel, and sorry about that. If you tend to go into the rebel, how do you walk yourself back to the center of health? Does anyone have a guess? Like, what would be your favorite way to do that? To get help to walk yourselves back if you notice that you're avoiding. Cindy Ann, yes. Meditate. Oh, I love that. Yes, that's a great suggestion. Yes, what's your question? Okay, go ahead and type it in the chat and I will get to it. Go for a walk with my dog, says Ashley. Great. Going for a walk actually releases things like serotonin and other beneficial neurochemicals in your brain that help you feel less stressed. So I will say that if you tend to go into the rebel, it can be hard to come back to health because being a rebel feels really good. You're like, I don't care. I'm going to do what I want. And it can be really challenging actually to recognize that you need to come down from that and come back and refocus. So that's why it's really helpful to put in place ahead of time structures like, of course, a board of directors or a coach or a therapist or trusted advisors that can give you feedback that you will value and that you can take in. Okay, how do you walk yourself back if you're a competitive overachiever? If you find yourself just working harder than everyone else? I actually think in this case, meditating or going for a walk with your dog can be really great ways to do that. If you notice that you've gotten tight and you're just like working really hard, and there might be a lot of envy here or um, fear or worry that's driving the competition and the overachieving. And so if you notice those emotions present, you need to ask yourself, how can I get back to the center of loving myself and knowing that I'm enough? If you fall into anxious people pleaser, again, I would tend to notice the tightness in my body and the feeling one down, like less than, not good enough. And in that case, do your practices, whether it's journaling, talking to your therapist, or, dancing is often something that brings us joy and confidence, something that moves your muscles, that moves the energy through your system, whatever your favorite way to do that is. Maybe it's going to the gym. Um, and then if you're a hopeless procrastinator, this one can also be challenging if your nervous system is in freeze, if you're avoiding and not good enough, feeling not good enough. Like you might feel that there's some fear, like, oh my gosh, I don't want to do this hard thing because I don't know how to do it, or it's going to take too much energy, and you might be feeling overwhelmed. There's too many things to do. So something I always recommend here is to co-work with someone. I find that can unlock the ability to actually get shit done. Um, and also just picking one thing and doing 1% of the thing. There's a lot of ways to do this. The idea is to figure out what works best for your nervous system. Of course, the book Atomic Habits is very helpful for this. But if knowing what to do is too much right now, that's okay. All you need to do for now is to notice what is the way in which I tend to go out of balance. And once you notice, you can take the 4 steps back to health. First, you bring non-judgmental awareness. And like I said before, this is a quote from a neuroscience researcher. Your brain is soothed internally by compassion, not by pressure, willpower, or emotion suppression. So the more you can bring that non-judgmental awareness, the more you will help your brain come back into integration. So first, become aware. Second, notice your body and the feelings that are going on in your body. Are you angry? Are you frustrated? Are you in overwhelm? Are you in fear? And send compassion and love to yourself. Then ask yourself, what is the one thing I need? And how am I going to get it? There have been so many times in my businesses, because I've founded two, where I've gotten up every morning and just said, okay, what do I need? And how am I going to get it? Awesome, Matthew. And number 4, which I really, really recommend, is ask for help. A lot of these patterns are very strong, and it's hard for us to see our way through by ourselves alone. So make sure you have a trusted mentor, a therapist, a coach, an advisor, someone who you can ask for help from when the emotional and body and mental things all go out of whack, because they're going to go out of whack. That's just part of being human. We're not looking for perfection here. We're looking for awareness of the truth of our human experience in our moment to moment life every day. Okay, so let's see. Cindy, I don't see your question in the chat, but feel free to put it there at some point. Great. So now, oh, and if you want more resources, I adore this book, Search Inside Yourself. You've probably heard of it. It's mindfulness. Chade Meng Tan was a Google engineer. He created a mindfulness program by engineers for engineers. It's hilarious and extremely helpful, all of those practices. And then, of course, Dare to Lead if you want to read more about compassion, vulnerability in a leadership setting. And it is has a lot of great research in there. Let's see. I'm more of an overachiever. Yes. So for those of us overachievers, when we go into obsession with the business, you want to notice the tightness in your body. That's usually the first sign that maybe we've gone out of balance. And how can we come back to the center of health from this place of, I'm going to relate to my business from this spacious, centered, flexible place inside of me. That is how you stay happy in your business. Yep. Over cover but not arrogant. Um, yeah, the lower right quadrant, right? Some degree of that of not good enough coupled with obsession. Yep. And you can definitely oscillate between the two. This isn't an exact science, y'all. This isn't math, psychology. So humans are very wild and complex. Yeah. Okay. Now we're going to look at your relationship grid. So this is how you go out of balance in your personal relationships. So, with your romantic partner, even with your colleagues or with friends, we're going to apply the same strategy and look at what are our tendencies and how we relate to other people. So, here the quadrants are similar. The x axis this time it is again about your presence in the relationship, but here we're calling it boundaries. And the two extremes are you're walled off, like, don't talk to me, don't touch me. You kind of disappear behind a wall when stressed. Or on the other end, boundaryless, where you reach out more and more and become needier when you're stressed. And the y axis is again how you feel about yourself, whether you are in toxic shame in one extreme or grandiosity in the other extreme. So let's see how this plays out. Um, if you tend to go walled off and one up when you relate to other people when you're stressed, you're going to be wearing a t-shirt that says, "Who needs you?" Right? So if things get tough, maybe you're uncomfortable, you need to have a difficult conversation, you might find yourself going one up and walled off, and you're wearing a t-shirt that says, "Who needs you?" Um, and if you tend to go more on the needy end, boundaryless and one up, you are wearing a t-shirt that says love me or else, right? Because you still think you're better than everyone, but you need love. If you tend to go boundaryless and one down, you're wearing a t-shirt that says please, please love me. And if you tend to go walled off and one down, then you're like, oh, why bother? Why even bother with this relationship? So, what are the emotions of each quadrant? Okay, that was the wrong button. Apologies. Um, if you're in this quadrant, this overall emotion is one of entitlement. And again, these are about where you go when you're at your worst. These aren't about who you are. This one can tend to violence, different forms of that. Not really talking about physical violence here, but it's like the love me or else. This one, the emotion is desperation, and this one is depression. Absolutely. You, Cindy, is a great question. Don't we all have some of all of this? Well, like I said, humans are messy and wild. It really depends, but I absolutely can visit any one of these quadrants at different points in my life. Remember, you're not here to pigeonhole yourself and say, this is me. That's not what this is about. This is noticing where do you tend to go when you're stressed. I like to say, what's your favorite way to act out when you're stressed? Okay, so I'm going to put you in breakout rooms again, in groups of three, and you'll each have 2 minutes to talk about what's your favorite way. I put favorite in quotes there to act out when you're stressed in your relationships. Um, and again, we all visit all of these. So there's no shame in any of it. It's really about bringing that non-judgmental awareness to your patterns. This is how you heal them. We first start with awareness, and then we'll talk about how to walk ourselves back to the center of health. So I will put you, so take a screenshot of this screen so that you have it to refer to in your breakout rooms, and I will put you there. Let's see. Okay, so you're invited to your rooms, and I will let you know when to begin. Okay. Okay, first person, go ahead and share. You have 2 minutes. Ready, go. Okay, first person finishing up, finish your sentence. And next person, second person begin. Start now. Okay, second person finish your sentence. And the third person start now. For those of you who only have two, you can continue the conversation however you like. All right, welcome back, everybody.
Okay.
So, who would like to share what they discovered? What is your quote unquote favorite way to go out of balance in
This
relationships? Let me know, what's your favorite way to go out of balance in relationships? So, for me, I know I can visit all of these quadrants. The please love me or else, who needs you? I'm less in the why bother quadrant, but at different times in my life, I have been in different places. Anyone else want to share or have a question? Okay, so let's talk about how to, if you're not asking a question, make sure to mute yourselves. So let's talk about how to walk yourself back to the center of health. So if you're out here in the who needs you quadrant, how do you come back to the center of health? So again, the first step is noticing, just being like, oh, I've walled off. I'm wearing the t-shirt that says, who needs you? I'm kind of looking down. And you want to ask yourself, how, in my opinion, being walled off means you don't feel safe to open up and share and be vulnerable. Like it hasn't been safe for you. So the question I would say to ask yourself is, what do I need? What conditions would help me feel safe enough to actually come out from behind my wall? Walking yourself down from feeling better than others, again, that can be hard because it feels good. So that is trickier. You might need, again, a trusted therapist or a coach or a mentor. If you're feeling like love me or else, then this can be on the boundaryless side where you're feeling a lot needier. So if you notice that you're feeling like nothing is filling up your cup and you're really just wanting lots of love from the outside, because you never feel like you have enough, then that's an indication that you need to start to love yourself more. Like, what are the practices that would help you love your own self? And this is a big topic. Most of my clients are very resistant to that. We've been taught that it's selfish. But actually, you can only really love someone else well when you also love yourself. These are all big topics. I could spend an hour talking about how to walk yourself back from each of these quadrants. So this is just a bite-sized amount. Um, I'll tell you where you can get more resources in a moment. If you're one down and boundaryless and you're wearing the t-shirt, please, please love me, I'm unworthy, then here you might want to work on self-esteem because being in shame doesn't feel very good, feeling like you're not worthy. And so you might want to ask yourself, who told me that it wasn't okay to be me? Who told me that I'm not worthy or not good enough? Where did that belief come from? And you might write to some of your friends and ask them, what are the qualities or the strengths that you see that I have? Um, to help yourself start to recenter in how you are already awesome. Some of this can be the work of a lifetime too. So don't expect an instant fix. But I think I see it as peeling layers of an onion. As I've been in different relationships over the course of my life, I've seen myself play out different patterns, and it brings up different things to my awareness for me to heal. So first there was self-esteem, then there was boundaries, then we revisit self-esteem and we revisit boundaries. And that's just how it is. It's a spiral process of healing. Okay. We do wall off sometimes not to be pushover. How do we treat that? Do wall Absolutely. So I think there's a difference between pushing away and walling off out of fear of being run over versus, so that's like a fear, a rigid, a harsh, hard, certain response. But if you're in the center of health, you will able to be flexible. You will be able to be flexible and nuanced in your response to a threat. It won't come from fear. It'll come from a deep centeredness in your own self-worth. Uh-huh. Yeah, I think you can say Matthew says his group had questions on what the grandiosity shame axis represents. So this is getting really real with yourself about how you tend to go out of balance in your relationships. You are not telling anyone else what they're doing. This is an awareness practice of how you tend to go out of balance in interpersonal relationships. Like, do you tend to go one up? Or do you tend to go one down? If grandiosity and shame, again, those are extremes, right? So there's a whole spectrum between health and the extreme. Do you tend to just go a little bit one up? Or do you tend to just go a little bit one down and think, oh no, I did something wrong. I'm not good enough. But this is about you, not about other people. And then if you are in the why bother quadrant, wearing a t-shirt, why bother with this relationship? Um, you can think about again, how do you come up from the shame? How do you start to feel better about yourself? And what conditions do you need to create the safety to come out from behind the wall? But this one again is a little freezy. It can be challenging to walk yourself back on your own. I would suggest definitely get support. Okay, good questions, y'all. Good questions. Um, yeah, and some of these words might be triggering, and that's okay. We're trying to take a very sober look at human behavior, at your own behavior, so you can be honest with yourself, right? We're bringing that non-judgmental awareness to yourself of what are my tendencies. Okay, and this is from one of my teachers, Terry Real, who teaches relational life therapy, and he's writes in the New York Times. He's been working in the field for 40 years and has developed this way of thinking about self-esteem and boundaries. And he's a renowned specialist in relationships. So, how do you come back to the center of health? In this case, use compassion. So, soothe your inner child who's acting out. with compassion. They're doing it for a good reason. You're probably going behind a wall to protect yourself. You're probably going one up or one down to protect yourself. And boundaryless is also you're trying to get what you need in order to feel safe. Again, if you tend to go walled off, ask yourself, what would you need to feel safe? If you're boundaryless, in what ways, figure out in what ways are you already loved? In what ways are you already amazing? If you tend to go one up, what Terry Real likes to say is it's in your enlightened self-interest to come down to the same as self-esteem, to the center of health. Because when you can create connection, then it benefits you. Okay, and if you go one down, if you tend to go one down, what would giving yourself love look like? And that's a deep inquiry. You might notice the ways in which you push love away um, to feel safe. So again, these are very deep topics. Thank you all for entertaining it. Okay, now before we move on, some great resources for romantic relationships or interpersonal relationships are setting boundaries that stick. Almost 100% of the clients I've worked with the past 10 years, no one has been able to set good boundaries. It's not taught in our culture, and we think boundaries are mean, but actually they're essential for healthy relating. And then if you want to know more about the relationship grid, read Getting to Us by Terry Real. Okay, so nope. Um, I'm going to talk about communication for a moment for those of you that can stay longer, but first, um, I want to tell you how to contact me for those of you who need to leave right at the top of the hour. So what we talked about today in summary are 4 steps to the center of health in your business, in your relationship with your business. We also talked about self-esteem and boundaries in your personal relationships. And we haven't talked about radical candor yet, but that is one awesome communication practice that was developed by a woman who worked at Apple and Google and was mentored by Sheryl Sandberg. And I'll tell you about that in a moment. Um, First, here's a QR code. Please, it should have all the links for how to connect with me. I am teaching a class June 5th called Charm the Pants Off Your Wife, which is about having a better connection with your spouse. It is directed toward men. If you're a woman, you're welcome to come, but I will be talking to men. I'm starting a 3-month course for men in relationship called True Chemistry on June 17th. And you can follow me on Instagram at Dr. Jessica Gold. Meanwhile, my other business, our startup, is called Digital Wisdom, and we created our first product called Web Wisdom. It's in public beta right now. It's a free website concierge that helps you get inside your clients' heads and get more sales while you sleep. So check out all those links at the code there, and you're welcome to email me as well about any of this.